I'd like to apologize for the infrequent videos lately. I've recently spent quite a bit of time traveling because a close family member of mine was dying of lung disease. I wanted to save my goodbyes and provide emotional support to my father, and so I've spent quite a bit of time lately away from home. But it was time well spent. Lately, I've had a few requests to make my opinion known about Basel III and its potential impact on the gold market. I haven't taken the time to make a video on that topic, largely because I think it's a non-issue. Hopefully I'll find some time to explain why over the next week or so. In the meantime, there is a trend that I think is much more important, which bears watching. The Bureau of Labor Statistics just released a report a few days ago concerning job openings and labor turnover. I copied the heading and the first couple of graphs here on the slide for anyone who wants to look up the report and read it. On the surface, the content looks quite innocent. You can see in the left-hand chart the sharp dip in job openings in April 2020 resulting from business responding to the perceived threat of business weakness resulting from the outbreak of COVID-19. The dashed line on the chart on the right shows a spike in separations around that time, reflecting mass layoffs. Later in the year 2020, the job openings recovered and separation rate declined as business leaders came to conclude that the total impact of the pandemic on demand was not nearly as large as what had been expected. One can see by looking at the job openings chart on the left that starting at the beginning of this year, the number of job openings has been spiking. It would be natural to conclude that this labor market tightness is being created as a result of businesses opening back up. But if one reads through the report, one will quickly see the statement, which I reproduced at the right. It says, in April, the quits level and rate increased to a series high of 4 million and 2.7% respectively. Quits increased in a number of industries, with the largest increases in retail trade, professional and business services, and transportation, warehousing, and utilities. This is very interesting. The large number of job openings that we are seeing is not merely the result of business leaders responding to increased demand. It is largely the result of people quitting their jobs. They are walking away. Now, this is an interesting phenomenon because what it tells me is that workers are now feeling more empowered than they felt in the past. They don't feel like they need to merely accept what companies are offering in exchange for their time. In a sense, they are saying to their bosses, I don't have to, so I'm not gonna. Hey, that would make for a pretty good slogan on a t-shirt, don't you think? Maybe I'll have one made for myself. But back to the subject. We haven't seen much over the past decade in terms of price escalation in goods and services, at least nowhere near the rate of inflation in the money supply. Note that I said inflation in the money supply and not inflation in the price of goods and services. I do that deliberately. When government redefines inflation as increases in the price level, it deflects responsibility. The definition of inflation is an increase in the supply of money and credit. In that sense, government has total responsibility. We haven't seen price increases commensurate with the money supply, largely because people have accepted low levels of wage increases. This is partly driven by competition in the labor market resulting from globalism. It is also partly driven by employees who feel like they don't have any other choices. Maybe what we are now seeing is that people have gotten a taste of the choices that they actually have. Maybe they are realizing that they have more power than they thought. Consider this. Recently, Tim Cook of Apple announced to his employees that he wants them to come back to the office at least 3 days per week. The employees were not pleased. In fact, 80 of them sent Tim Cook an email telling him how displeased they were at being told to return to work. They stated, quote, "We feel like the current policy is not sufficient in addressing many of our needs," end quote. Now, Apple corporate headquarters is an absolutely beautiful place. If a person had to go to a physical location to work, they could do much worse than Apple headquarters. The response had more to do with the loss of autonomy resulting from being told that they had to be physically present. After about a year of being productive, being able to work from wherever they chose. The letter went further to say, quote, "Over the last year, we have often felt not just unheard, but at times actively ignored, with messages such as, We know many of you are eager to reconnect in person with colleagues back in the office. With no messaging acknowledging that there are direct contradictory feelings amongst us, it feels dismissive and invalidating." End quote. Now, this directly contrasts with the desire of Tim Cook, who thinks that people need to be at work at a central location. It's the old style of management. But I think the divide between employees and executive leadership is much more than just about physical work location. I've seen similar disconnects where I work, not only about physical locale, but on many other issues. Executive leadership where I work has used employee surveys to support their policies. Meanwhile, the employees scratch their heads and wonder how the leadership could possibly interpret the surveys the way that they did. Of course, one who has a strong background in statistics and knows how to design a survey that will always produce the desired result knows exactly how it can be made to look like employees are in support of corporate policies. But the funny thing is that people are voting with their feet. They have decided that they no longer need to take what is offered. Now, we'll have to wait and see if this results in wage increases and thus price increases. I suspect it will. I also expect that we are on the verge of a power shift. I think we are seeing a shift towards labor having more power than they have in the recent past. It's a cycle that has played out many times in the past. We're moving towards an era of, I don't have to, so I'm not gonna. And if this is true, it is going to be much more important and impactful than Basel III.